Spirit of God in the clear running water, blowing to greatness the trees on the hill. Blow, blow, blow till I be but breath of the Spirit flowing in me.
Hello, welcome to Spirit of Life. My name is Geraldine Lee, your host, and our guest is Father Glen, Anglican priest of St. Oswald's Church, Glen Iris. Welcome.
Good afternoon.
It's great to have you back again.
Yes.
Yes, for those who haven't heard your story, would you like to share a bit of your spiritual journey, maybe from a different angle?
Okay. I guess my spiritual journey began as a child in the bush. Lived on a farm, and I used to like disappearing out the back door and running through the bush barefoot and sitting in trees and being around animals. And it was that connection to all the animals and all the nature that was around about me, and a sense that I had a deep relationship with all of that I belonged in that place, and in some ways those things belonged in me. And it was a part of the beginning of what we would see as Aboriginal people, my custodial relationship with all that has been created. As a result of that, and because I grew up in a family that didn't, for a whole lot of reasons, didn't identify as Aboriginal and attempted to fit into society, and I did grow up in a period that was known as assimilation, when we had to become as white as we could be. I joined the church. I was an altar boy in the local Anglican church. My mother was an Anglican. So my journey was kind of in two places, two ways. And I remained within the Christian scheme of things for much of my life. But as I've moved on, my Aboriginality has become important to me. It has become to show itself in how I see and feel, and how I read the scriptures, how I do liturgy, the kind of language I use in those places. It influences how I think about key religious ideas, and it's vital to being an Aboriginal who is a priest in this place. So in some senses I'm living in two worlds.
Yes. Wow, that would be quite a challenge, especially, to look at you wouldn't strike me as a person of Aboriginal descent.
And that is often a question. We still in this country judge people by their colour, regardless of whether we think that's the case or not. And our Aboriginality is often defined by colour. You have to be a certain colour to be Aboriginal. Well, that's not necessarily true, because you have a darker coloured skin because you live closer to the equator. It's about melanin and stopping you from having sun cancers. So Aboriginals in Australia have been various different shades of colours right from the very beginning. You probably don't need as much melanin in your skin in Tasmania as you do in Northern Territory. So, and my brother is much more the stereotypical looking person. I have my mother's colouring, but I have my father's innate understanding of being Aboriginal. So, and it's it is often something that people will go, but you can't be Aboriginal, you're just a white person. No, I'm not. And it doesn't necessarily make it, it makes it difficult, because sometimes you're not black enough for either Aboriginal people or non-Aboriginal people to be Aboriginal, and you have to explain yourself all the time.
Yeah.
And that's very difficult.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And how? And with all this, you came about something you've been very passionate about, statement from the heart.
Yeah, well, the statement from the heart is it's important, I think. After 250 years, we've not really resolved the destruction that occurred as a result of the settlers coming to Australia. And Aboriginal people have been dispossessed of their culture and their lands and their identity, and are constantly having to do that process of proving who they are and that they are still here. And they still need to receive at some point of time justice. And the whole of the statement of the heart is about justice. It's not about nation building, it's not about close relationships, it's not about reconciliation, it is about justice. And it's one of the most important statements that we can have, and we have to take it seriously as a nation.
Wow. And how do you see it looking, this statement of the heart? How will you know when it's achieved?
Well, it's in some sense we want to talk about achievements with it, but as I understand it, it's about having. It's made up of four elements: the voice and the treaty, truth telling, and makarata. And it's once we get the voice is about having ourselves, our sovereignty inside the Constitution alongside the sovereignty of the state, and having a voice about who we are so that we're recognised and seen. The treaty is about us agreeing that as we now see each other, we're all here together, then we have to agree to move on and to make decisions of together, and that's a treaty. And that's conciliation, not been there before as an Australian population. Truth-telling is where we tell the truth from both sides of the story, not just how bad it was for Aboriginal people, but how others could think that way. A young boy that I was talking to at a Catholic school, and he said, how was it possible that one group of people could see another group of people as non-human and therefore kill them?
On that note, we will have to go for a break, but that's very interesting. You've been watching Spirit of Life. Stay with us and we'll be back after the break. Hello, welcome back to Spirit of Life. My name is Geraldine Lee, your host, and our guest is Reverend Glen, Anglican priest of St. Oswald's Church, Glen Iris. Welcome back. Reverend Glen, you were talking about the statement of the heart, is it? Where makarata is one of the steps, and you were talking about there's a boy in the school. Could you tell us more about that incident?
When I went to a group of students in a Catholic school actually, and I asked them to write down some questions that they wanted some answers to during National Reconciliation Week, and he'd written down this question about looking at Australia. How come one group of people that were here could see another group of people as being not human and therefore could kill them out or exterminate them? And it was and he was only 11 years of age. It's a very insightful question.
Wow. That
he'd written back in his classroom. And that question is the key to this whole process of the statement of the heart. How do we get justice as a result of that way of thinking that brought about those issues right from the word go? So while we do the things like the voice and the treaty and the truth-telling, the really key to this is makarata, which is often talked about being sort of coming together after a dispute. But it's more than that. It's more about how do we move forward in a different way? How do we move forward differently? How do we move forward with one group of people making reparation or dealing with the consequences of how they have behaved towards the original people of this country. And that means that while we move forward and we come together to move forward, it will not always be a smooth journey. It is about, and in Aboriginal culture, in various groups, there would have been a spear in the thigh after somebody had done something wrong. And that's not a superficial wound, that's a serious wound, and you walk differently and you are different as a result of it, because you know consequences count. So Australia has to find a way to move forward differently, walk with a limp, so that we can make those things right that were done wrongly.
Yeah, you talked earlier on, maybe at your last interview, about people who feel that they had nothing to do with people who are Aboriginal, and they need to pay the price of someone else's sin.
Yeah.
What is your response to that?
And I think that's people will raise that question. You will often get that from Australian people who will say, but I wasn't born then, I didn't do any of that, so what's this got to do with me? And we then often get people who come in from other countries around the world, who come here now and are living here, who say, but we weren't here then, so what's it got to do with us? The issue is that what it has to do with all of us is that we have certain entitlements and privileges that have come our way because we have stolen the country from another group of people. And we've never done treaty, and we've never done anything that was going to be reparation for that act. So when we come here and we live here, we benefit from the stealing of the land. We benefit from the fact that somebody else lost their culture, their language, their relationship with country. They've been moved off land. They had their children stolen, a whole range of issues. So yes, it does affect every one of us. And we have to think about, how do we pay for? Or another way, how do we say to people, because of your pain I have privilege, how do I help you to share my privilege?
What about things like positive discrimination, where at some universities, at some schools, they really make sure that Indigenous people or people with Aboriginal descent are in those universities or in those schools and in those jobs? And why is it that some of people with Aboriginal descent do not actually take up those positions?
Well, I think there's a combination of things here. I think there has been, and it's important for our Aboriginal people to have the opportunities to get an education and to participate in that kind of process. But not all Aboriginal people want to do that. Many Aboriginal people who end up going to university or places may already speak 4 languages. And English is their 5th language. They may already be very, very sophisticated in their own communities in terms of understanding Aboriginal medicine, Aboriginal land management, Aboriginal fire techniques. So they may already be very, very skilled, highly skilled people. So they don't always need to go and have a Western education to validate that. But generally speaking, most of our people are if they have the opportunities, they take those opportunities. And we have some, people who, and I guess one of the things about that though is that what I want to say to people is, just don't celebrate us because we actually do and behave like you.
I get what you're saying.
Celebrate us because we do know how to care for country. Celebrate us because we do know how to look after natural foods. Care for us because, appreciate us because of what we do, not because we become a Western lawyer or a Western doctor or a Western musician or whatever.
Yeah.
Celebrate us because we are Aboriginal.
Yeah, it's a very good point. Yeah, I mean, well, you can see it when people win sports and things like that. But what we might do is talk about it in the next section.
Thank you. Okay.
You've been watching Spirit of Life. Stay with us and we'll be back after the break.
Blow till I feel the breath of the Spirit blowing in me. Blow, blow, blow till I feel the breath of the Spirit blowing in me.
Welcome back to Spirit of Life. My name is Geraldine Lee, your host, and our guest is Reverend Glen, Anglican priest of St. Oswald's Church, Glen Iris. Welcome back. Could you explain on what practical levels people can, the average Australian can do to help with achieving the statement from the heart? And if you could explain a bit about the statement from the heart.
Well, statement from the heart is about justice and a sense of putting right what has been made wrong in the past. So it's about, and in doing that, we then reconcile ourselves to each other, but we do it at a deeper level than simply just fitting people into positions or places or ticking a box on a reconciliation action plan. But the kind of things that people would like people to begin to do is to do their own self-awareness and self-assessment and think about, what are the stereotypical ideas that come into their head when they think about Aboriginal people, and the questions about voice and the questions about treaty and the questions about truth, to become aware of how they think and how they speak and what are their biases in these situations. It's the most practical thing we can do, is to become aware of ourselves and how we respond to these issues. And as we do that, find ways to educate ourselves, find ways to listen to Aboriginal people and the things that they say. Be aware that you'll hear different things from different Aboriginal people, but it's important to listen to those things and to work through in your own mind what is and is not the most appropriate thing for you to do. One of the things is not to rush in and want to fix this, want to make things better, or want to put your ideas on top of Aboriginal people. The key thing is to listen to them, listen to what they've said, and the statement of the heart itself is this big invitation to Australia to join together to resolve the things from the past. So if we're able to do that, and we're able to allow Aboriginal people to be heard, allow ourselves to listen. Often I find when I'm talking to people are busy thinking about how they're going to respond to me and not actually hearing what I have to say.
Yeah, that's
not
right.
actually listening deeply and allowing what the words around this process to come to them. Listen carefully. Be available at the times that you have the possibility to do things with other people. Go along to events, watch and learn. And when you have the opportunity to make a considered and considerable impact on these matters, take those challenges up. It'll be costly, it's not going to be easy, but you need to make those kind of steps.
And what are some voices or some people that you would see as good icons or as good followers, who really are standing up for people of Aboriginal descent, the justice? What are some people that people could follow on YouTube or?
Well, that's a tough question, and I'm not sort of able to give you all kinds of groups. There are groups that have, and many of the churches have organisations within themselves that are positive towards it. Inside your Catholic world there is the Aboriginal Catholic Ministry, which works very strongly on making these things happen. There are organisations that, like the Anglican Board of Mission, who work closely with Aboriginal people and act as spokesmen and supporters. There are a range of organisations. I mentioned those two because I'm an Anglican and this you're Catholic, so we could talk about them, but I don't want to be putting other people in the spotlight. But there are just a case of looking and listening and being aware, and giving support to our new national government, who has stated that they want this to happen. So keep talking to them, keep reminding them of that promise, talk to your local member, and be actively engaged in that kind of process.
No, that's fantastic. And also your church, St. Oswald's Anglican Church in High Street, Glen Iris, you've got a website where people can contact you.
Go to our, it's at oswaldsgleniris.net.au, go to our website and have a look. Come down and visit the garden, spend time around the place. Come in and be, the Aboriginal art gallery that is as part of the place. We'll talk to you about these matters. We'd be very happy to discuss and support, and I do a lot of work going and talking to organisations and helping people to understand what this is all about.
Yes. I suppose sometimes when the stereotype of people who are from Aboriginal descent is the art and the music, what are the things that we forget to look at that we need to look at more?
Well, I think one of the things that we've got caught up is in culture, and we think about art and music and footballers. What we do need to understand that as Aboriginal people, we have a sophisticated cultural and spiritual and community basis for all the things that we do. And we need to remember that in the middle of all of this culture, there are people, and those people need to be celebrated and recognised and brought forward. Not just, again, as I said before, and one of the things about things like Aboriginal art, it has tended to be the art that non-Aboriginal people like Aboriginal people to do. Okay, so we in some ways have mediated that process for art. So when you come to our art gallery, you will see art done by people in Melbourne, and it will not look like the art that comes from Central Australia. Yep. It's art that comes out of the modern day contemporary experience of Aboriginal people. And that's the same whether it's the modern day music, but it's also, we need to watch Aboriginal people who are doing fashion, who are working in environmental issues. Yes. Our rangers who are working, and I love our rangers who are working on country. It's been fascinating, and we're very honoured to have you come and speak, and hopefully in a few months we could have you back again, because you've got so much knowledge and so much experience, and I really appreciate it. I wish you all the best. Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
You've been watching Spirit of Life. Join us again next week. Goodbye and God bless you.
Bring it to birth and blow where you will. Blow, blow, blow till I be but breath of the Spirit.